In this virtual day trip, we're in the stunning county of Surrey.
Join us as we explore the beautiful borough of Waverley.
We'll embrace moments to pause and reflect.
And allow space for creativity along the way.
This episode features the breathtaking Thursley Common.
And we'll take a step back in time at the Rural Life Living Museum.
We'll wander through glorious Farnham Heath, discovering hidden treasures.
And immerse ourselves in the gardens of the Sculpture Park.
Welcome to your virtual day trip. I'm Luna, and alongside Annalise, we're thrilled to take you with us through Waverley.
We'll explore two magnificent nature reserves, board a train, whoop whoop, and delve into the traditional crafts at the Rural Life Living Museum.
Our journey begins at the stunning Sculpture Park, where art meets nature.
So, settle in as we embark on this memorable day trip together.
Set within 10 acres of stunning arboretum and vibrant wildlife-filled water gardens, the Sculpture Park in Churt near Farnham has been transformed thanks to the extensive landscaping efforts and the introduction of thousands of new plants, bulbs and specimen trees.
The Sculpture Park presents a captivating sculpture exhibition throughout the year. It has over 300 established and emerging artists and displays over 1,000 modern and contemporary sculptures.
Spanning over 2 miles, the winding paths guide visitors through a mix of heathland and woodland in a naturally occurring valley, enhanced by 3 lakes fed by 2 natural springs.
Sian can tell us more about the different routes we can follow.
We have 4 different coloured routes. They are all varied, so there's not a set theme to each route, but there is coloured arrows that you follow. So it's all a bit of a labyrinth, so they'll sort of intertwine, but you know which colour you're on. We also have a wheelchair and buggy accessible route, which avoids any of the steps because we are in a valley, so there's quite a lot of woodland steps, but this is all flat. Half of the wheelchair accessible route is totally flat and the other half is on an incline, so some people can go up there and some find it a bit too hilly. It's worth coming at any time of the year. So during the spring we obviously have lots of daffodils and different spring flowers, lots of blossom. Then we have our rhododendrons in May, June time, and then we move on to roses, so we have lots and lots of rose bushes. Then in the summer it's really, really lush and green. We always have lots of rain and sun, which means everything just really erupts with green, lush plants. And then you move into October where it's all the oranges and reds because we have so many different trees. And then in the winter, a lot of the green has gone and a lot of the trees are more sparse, which means you can see through to different sculptures, whereas normally they might be covered a bit more. So you get much a better view of everything that time of year. For anyone visiting the park, they can really make a full day of it. So you're more than welcome to bring a picnic down. We've got plenty of picnic areas. And then the other offering is we are opposite an amazing pub called the Bell and Dragon, and you're more than welcome to go out at any time for tea and coffee, cake or lunch or a beer, and come back in afterwards. So it's a great facility that means you can spend the whole day here. Plenty of groups that come and visit us. Obviously we're very popular with schools. We have U3A groups. I know a lot of them are really interested in their photography, so it's they call it a photographer's dream because there's so many different angles and photos you can get here. Usually an artist will have a piece that they've created. It might be from, say, a limited edition, and they would like to show one of those pieces here. We do have our resident artist, Biggie Chikodzi, who comes over during the summer months. He is fantastic for talking to people. He's a really, really lovely guy. He's generally carving while he's here, so you can see him at work.
Thanks for the great introduction to the Sculpture Park, Sian. We'll head over and hear from Biggie.
So my name is Biggie Chikodzi. I come from a family of 6, 3 brothers and 3 girls. Born in Zimbabwe, in Harare. Been traveling internationally probably for the last 25 years, exhibiting stone sculptures. So my role in the Sculpture Park is I travel extensively across Zimbabwe, selecting a good body of work to bring over to the UK to exhibit at the sculpture park. Yes, and I liaise with all the artists that we represent here at the sculpture park. When I come to the sculpture park, I normally come between 5 to 6 months every summer. And beginning of the summer, that's when we receive the container that I will have shipped in from Zimbabwe. And my roles here is unpacking the container, doing restoration, and of course setting up the exhibition. I'm also involved with meeting and greeting clients as they come to the park, and I also give talks to school groups and other adult groups that visit to the park. So I enjoy working in Springstone. Springstone is mostly the very prominent medium that most Zimbabweans are using, and it's also very favorable with the English winter. So I'm working on this lovely, beautiful lady. I haven't gotten a title yet, but I'm at my final stage, which is sanding. So you sand wet and dry. So the dry sanding, it's grade 40, 60 and 80. Then from 120 you start going sanding, wet sanding, which is 120 and up to 2000 to get it to be really fine. Yes. So after sanding, then you hit the stone with a propane torch to open the stone pores, and with a very fine brush you apply beeswax, which will sort of enhance the colors to come out more. Zimbabwe is like the only country on the African continent with an international recognized sculpting movement where there's no formal art school. You are either born and raised in a family or in a community of sculptors, and you just apprentice with the next person available to you. So it's almost like it's handed down from one generation to another. And also Zimbabwe is the only country on the African continent with these stone deposits which are suitable for sculpting. Like you could never find them even in our neighboring countries like South Africa, Zambia, Mozambique, Botswana. They are specific to Zimbabwe. And quite interestingly, it's what gave birth to the name Zimbabwe. What Zimbabwe means is houses of stone because of the abundance of stone deposits that are found in the country. There was one specific sculpture that really fascinates me, especially with the creativity of the work. It's fighting stags. It's in driftwood. But these are like tiny little pieces of driftwood that are pinned together on a metal frame to make the sculpture. It's just amazing how he does it.
Thanks, Biggie. There's certainly plenty to inspire us here.
We have Eddie Powell to thank for that. As a photographer and a sculptor, he had a great vision when he purchased this land.
Let's meet his son, Oscar, the park curator, to learn about his childhood memories of the park and his current role.
So originally the site was just pine trees, bracken and brambles really, and just very overgrown and derelict. So over the years we've continuously de-brambled and brackened the place to let the other things flourish. So I worked here when I was about 10 years old, so that's 20 years ago. And when we first started, and me and my brother would come down and help my dad, helping out with putting the paths in, and but I showed an attraction to the landscaping and gardening side of things. So I've planted a lot of the trees and shrubs and bulbs that are here. So it's been a beautiful thing to see that and be a part of that for 20 years. I start off the day with a bit of maintenance, so having the place looking the best for the customers. And then landscaping wise, normally over the winter we get a lot less busy, so we take on a big landscaping project. We've re-landscaped a lot of the lakes and just made it a more natural environment for wildlife. Is our main aim for the landscaping jobs, is to anything to benefit the wildlife, and we have loads of songbirds and just got kingfishers now. We see them quite often here. So we got 3 small lakes, and by the bottom lake there's a little secluded bench, and which has a view of a beautiful kinetic sculpture. And then you have the kinetic sculpture, and there's a waterfall just by you as well, so you have the sound of the water. And that is normally where I see the kingfisher as well, early in the morning.
I absolutely love how, as you meander along the paths, you're not only treated to an eclectic display of artwork, but also surrounded by stunning wildlife that is lovingly nurtured and encouraged to thrive.
Let's meander over to Nick, who used to work in a very different environment.
I've worked at the park for approximately 20 years, and prior to working at the park, I was actually working for various merchant banks in London, having studied economics at university, but I knew the owner, and when I was made redundant from one of my jobs in London, he asked if I could come and do a bit of work to help out down here while I was on gardening leave. And having done a few months work here, I decided that I didn't want to commute back up to London and spend all my time on the train going to and from London, and far rather work in the outdoors in nature. So that was about 20 years ago, and I haven't left since. I love working here because it's the great outdoors. We're outdoors pretty much all day, all weathers. When we have a new sculpture arrive at the park, we need to firstly work out where it's going to go. So we try to find the best setting for it. If it's a fish or a boat, something, say, we'd look to put it somewhere around the pond or on the pond. If it's something more sort of architectural, then we'd need to try and find a space with a suitable backdrop where it's not going to clash and melt into the backdrop, or a bit of open sky if it's something that you need to see clearly. So we work out ideally where we would like it to go, and then is working out what we're going to do to get it there. Sometimes with the heavier pieces we can't get them to the upper reaches of the park because there's a few steps and steep hills. So we then need to work out how we're going to get it there. We use a trolley, we use a forklift, or various old school mechanisms like logs as rollers to move things around, which invented thousands of years ago, but does work remarkably well. We also look after the sculptures that are here, so checking that they're still secure and stable, cleaning either by jet washing or a bucket and soapy water. We will polish the bronzes, which we use a beeswax and often a bit of heat with, and also polishing some of the stone sculptures, but just generally keeping them as clean and tidy as we can, sometimes just leaf blowing to get any leaves and litter off them. So with about 1,000 sculptures on display, and obviously members of the public coming to look around and hopefully buy some of them, we also have various businesses and other people who will come in and look around, and they sometimes would like to borrow our sculptures. For example, going up to Chelsea Flower Show to help decorate a garden at the flower show there. We have also taken sculptures to the Royal Horticultural Society in Whistley to help with whatever shows or events that they have on. We did also, back in 2012 when the Olympics were in London, we had about 10 sculptures went up to the Athletes Village in London. That involved a big crane lorry and quite a lot of paperwork. We took a big bronze gorilla up there, and there's certainly been photographs of Tom Daley, the diver, and Maria Sharapova, the tennis player, posing with the gorilla that we had up at the Olympics. We had a couple of skeletons go to Glastonbury this year and last to help their circus performance area. So they do get far and wide, the sculptures, to various different homes and places. So that's one of the interesting parts of the jobs, is going to some of these events or big country houses and things like that. So yeah, always working in a lovely setting and beautiful places and working with different people.
You can see why Nick gave up the daily London commute to spend his days surrounded by nature and these wonderful artworks.
I'm delighted we came and met some new friends.
Well, it's always nice to have someone new to talk to who doesn't interrupt.
And on that note, we're off down the road for a walk around Thursley Common.
Thursley National Nature Reserve, covering 325 hectares, is one of the largest precious fragments of heathland in Surrey, with wonderful trails to explore.
The reserve invites you to explore its expansive open dry heathland, peat bogs and charming pine and deciduous woodlands. As you wander, you might spot about 20 species of dragonflies and damselflies, plus a sculpture of a dragonfly gracefully perched on a former electricity pylon.
Boardwalks make it easy to navigate the wetter areas. See how many newts you can spot.
It's also home to an array of birds, which include Dartford warblers, stonechats and gold crests.
It's lovingly managed by Natural England, with tremendous support from the Friends of Thursley Wardens.
The Rural Life Living Museum is just a few miles away in Tilford. It's home to 20 rural buildings and more than 40,000 fascinating objects.
As you might guess, keeping everything in shape can be expensive, so they are busy fundraising.
Let's take a step back in time, explore what makes this place so special and meet the amazing volunteers who fully embrace their roles.
Behind me is the cottage where Henry and Madge Jackson lived. They were the founders of the museum. That story started, first of all, in 1969. Madge thought that it would be lovely to have an old plough in the garden as decoration. So they searched in some woods near Waterlooville, found the plough, asked if they could buy it. They were told they could take it away, and they brought it here. Henry painted it, put it in the garden. And then that got them started on a sort of collection bug, really. And they had wagons and all sorts of other artefacts. And eventually, in 1973, their friends said, why don't you start a museum? And that's exactly what they did. They started a museum in Henry's yard and just opened it at weekends. And from there, the museum grew and grew like Topsy, really, with more and more things. Sadly, their children predeceased them, so they left the whole of the museum, the cottage, and all the artefacts to the Old Kiln Museum Trust. So the museum is now run by the Old Kiln Museum Trust. So that's how the museum began, in the garden of Madge and Henry. That was the seed, the start of it, and then it grew into the museum that we've got today.
Thank you for providing the background, Judy. We'll see you later.
It's like we've taken a stroll back in time through a charming rural village. Every building here holds its own story, with many rescued from the brink of demolition to bring their beauty to this special place.
Along with this remarkable collection of buildings, we can also learn about historical crafts and trades. Maurice has a wealth of skills to share.
I'm one of the volunteers here. I've been here for 30 years, so it may not look like it. What we're going to look at here is hops, which most people know what hops are. But they probably won't know is that Farnham used to be the major hop growing area in the country, at least equal to Kent. Hops were introduced into England in the Tudor period, and they came into Farnham fairly quickly after that. And for the next 300 years, it was the major industry in Farnham. The whole town was involved in it as growers, pickers, and the whole economy of the town depended on hops. I'm probably one of the last pickers of hops, because I picked hops during the Second World War and up until 1954. At that stage we were being paid about a shilling a bushel, and that is a 5 bushel basket. Initially hops were grown up polled. There'd be 3 poles from one root of hops, and when they were ready for picking, a bloke called a pole puller would come round, cut the vine off of there, lever the pole out and hand it to the pole picker. That sounds simple, but when you realise that this hop ground is full of old ladies and their menfolk in a hurry to earn money, there would sometimes be a fight over who got the best pole. In 1900, a chap down in Kent called Mr. Butcher invented a system of fixed poles and wires, and the hops were grown up strings. Thereafter that, each picker was given a row of hops so that they could work down the row. And when they wanted a lot of hops down, they would literally pull it across their bin. And once the hops were down, they would lay across the bin. This is a 5 bushel, we had 7 bushels. And there was always a matriarch in charge, a granny or an auntie or someone, and they controlled the bins. The matriarch would pick into the big bin, and you could see that they were very, very fast at doing it. Everybody else would pick into a smaller type of basket. Twice a day the pole puller and his mate would come round and they'd make up the bushel. So here's your bar. If this is half full of hops, they'd pull them like this to make sure they didn't pack down too far, and then they would tip the other ones in like that until it came up to the black line there. And that's you were paid by your bushels. The hops were then taken into a kiln and dried overnight with a fire underneath, and then they were packed into big things called pockets and sent off to market.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of hard work, Morris.
You definitely want a beer at the end of the day.
Talking of hard work, let's venture over to the blacksmith and see what John is making in the old kiln forge.
Forging is among the oldest and most captivating methods of metalworking in history. As the sign indicates, it won't come cheap if you want something done quickly. So, let's not speak to John while he's focused on his work.
A talented blacksmith uses a hammer and an anvil to form metals. Keeping the fire burning continuously means John works at high temperatures and uses considerable strength behind that hammer.
John is shaping metal into a lovely leaf. Considering the size of the tools, it's incredible to see something so delicate being made.
Visiting the forge offers an incredible experience to enjoy seeing this traditional skill in action. Here, John adds the stem to the leaf, pushing back into the heat to make the metal more malleable.
Switching between the heat and anvil requires concentration and organisation. It's looking good, John.
Having all the right tools on hand is important. This former creates a lovely curve on the leaf, and now John adds a little flourish to the stem. The metal tip goes into the water, making it harder, but John can still shape the rest of the hot metal into a lovely curve.
The long tools to grasp the metal are important as they keep the heat away from John's fingers. Wow, that's a lot of steam.
A dip in the cold water cools the metal enough to hold, and we can see its beauty.
After a quick polish, it's finished. Thanks for my lovely keyring, John. It's a work of art.
Time for our craft activity.
Let's take a moment to pause and reflect on the beautiful places we explored today by colouring in our postcards. You will need the postcard printout, colouring pencils or pens, a pair of scissors and a glue stick. Colouring isn't just for children, it's a wonderful relaxing activity that people of all ages can enjoy. Once you've finished colouring, simply cut out the postcard, stick it together and write a note to a friend. Why not invite them to join you on a visit to some of the lovely places we discovered, or tell them about your favourite places? Don't forget to pop a stamp on before you post it. So let's grab our pens and pencils and bring our adventure to life on paper.
Now, back to Morris, who will shine a light on light.
Up until about 1850, the only light that the poor cottagers would have, certainly in the Surrey area, would have been these rushlights. They would get a lot of light from their fire, and they would only light a light when they really needed a bit of extra, so they did most of the stuff by firelight. And the rushlights are made from these common rushes that grow on the common at the back, and basically you peel back as much of the outside greenery as possible and leave the pith inside, over 3/4 of it. When you've peeled the outside skin off most of the rush, you let it dry and then drag it through a shallow tray of hot fat. The best fat was mutton fat. I must confess, this is Tesco lard. You light your first one from your fire, and then I'm going to use a candle, but I think you can see that the rush light gives as good a flame as the candle. A good rush light will probably burn for 1/4 of an hour to 20 minutes, but it does need you to pull through the holder This is a rushlight holder. The holder is a very good replica, actually made in our forge over there by the blacksmith. But if you went into an antique shop, you couldn't tell it from an original.
Moving across the museum site, Judy welcomes us to what would have been a modern prefabricated building in the 1940s, complete with electric lights.
So there's no need to go and collect those rushes before evening sets in.
These prefabs were put up after the Second World War, 1946, and the families that moved into them thought they were really, really luxurious because they had all mod cons. I used to live in a prefab, and I remember moving in and there was a loo inside, and that was just really something special because prior to that we'd had to go across the yard. They were put up in areas where there was a lot of bombing and on small sites around the country. The prefab that I grew up in was from Eastbourne, and it happened to be opposite my grandparents' house, and I can remember when I was only 4 years old being in their house and watching out of the window and seeing these big sections of prefab arriving, because they were built in sections and then bolted together in a very special design. They had the central heating, as it were, water heating system in the centre, then all the rooms that depended on the heat built around them. So the kitchen was round the central unit, the bathroom, and then there was a fire in the sitting room. It was more like a wood burner which had doors that closed. So we moved into this prefab, and it was just so exciting because it was a sitting room like the room we're sitting in now, and there were fitting cupboards. I mean, to have fitting cupboards was something fantastic. There would have been 2 bedrooms, the room that my parents had, and then the other room that we've now got furnished as a dining room would have been my sister's and my bedroom. So we had to share that bedroom. And then of course there's the kitchen, which is really well furnished, again with what was thought of then as a fitting kitchen, with cupboards and everything like that. And what was also good, because we weren't very poor and a lot of the people that moved into prefabs didn't have a lot of money, they didn't need a lot of furniture because there were the cupboards and all the facilities. And the good thing in the kitchen that even my friends were envious of was that there was a fridge. And my mother used to make iced lollies in the fridge and give them to my friends who used to think, wow, this is just like something else.
There's no time for refreshments yet. We're off to school. A 1913 corrugated iron classroom.
But we'll step back even further to 1891 in a lesson with Schoolmaster Mike.
Well, hello, I'm Mike. I've been a volunteer here now since 2012. For 37 years I was a secondary school teacher, so coming here was a bit of a change, but a really nice change, because I spend my time very often dealing with school visits, children who come here to get the experience of a Victorian school. When we do a school session, I tell the children obviously at the start that we are pretending, we're acting Victorians, and then I begin. So, I walk into the classroom, I make them stand up. I make them sit up straight. I tell them what will happen to them if they don't sit up straight. I always tend to smile at the same time so it doesn't frighten them. And then we give out the slates, do some writing. Not too difficult, very often just a few letters or a verse or a word, depending on the age of the children. I also then try to get them to do some mathematics, which very often is counting in 2s up to 20, which is a bit of a challenge. And then we usually do some speech, how to speak clearly, elocution if you want to call it that.
A Victorian school day doesn't sound like a lot of fun.
Especially if you were left-handed. The contraption you'd be made to wear looks painful.
Like all of the museum, the classroom is full of artefacts, including pots of ink and old wooden desks.
One volunteer who has strong memories of the classroom is Heath.
I walked in here when they used to have an annual event called Rustic Sunday, when it was, the place was on display and different activities going on. And I walked in here, and I think you've interviewed Judy. Well, I've known Judy a long time. In fact, I was the best man at their wedding. And they I walked in here and she was in here, obviously, you know, to talk to visitors. And I walked in here and I said, "This looks just like something from the Bourne School, Judy." And I remember I left it in 52. And she said, "Well, that's where it came from." And that was before I was a volunteer here. So yeah, I don't, and it was all dismantled and brought here, I understand, and put up by the volunteers. I started at the Bourne School in September 1946, but I didn't get to use this classroom until I went into what we call the big school, because you spent, I think, 2 years in the infants, and then you moved on to the big school. I used to walk to school about, I don't know, a mile and a half, I suppose, on my own. And then when we moved, it was over 2 miles, and I still walked to school on my own. But when I was bellboy, I had to get there for 8:45 to ring first bell. That was to call everybody to school. And then second bell at 9 o'clock. Bell had to be rung every time there was an interval of some sort. Yeah. And that was the bell for the whole, well, it was a particularly big school, but that was the bell for the whole school. And yeah, well remember that.
Thanks, Keith. Now, we're off to learn some new skills with the West Surrey Guild of Weavers, Spinners and Dyers.
Meeting regularly in Aldershot, Elstead and Farnham, they also run sessions here at the museum.
This skilled group is one of 110 affiliated member guilds across the UK that aim to preserve and improve craftsmanship in hand weaving, spinning and dyeing.
It's lovely to see the various stages the fleece needs to go through before it's ready to work with.
Having a go helps you learn more about these important heritage crafts and the skills involved.
The guild members are wonderful advocates and teachers.
I look forward to receiving that gorgeous blanket when you finish it, Annalise.
As well as the hands-on activities, there's a wonderful collection of vehicles to see.
Hi, I'm Gary. I'm a volunteer here at the museum, and basically my responsibility is in anything with an engine on it. So we get a lot of stuff running, stuff that hasn't been run for many years, and then I have all the fun of driving it and looking after it and maintaining it. We've got 2 examples here of our tractors. So we've got our little trusty tractor there. This one is a hand operated tractor. They are, it doesn't always live up to its name when we try and start it. We did have to do a slight conversion to that one to get it running. They're very heavy, they're very front heavy. If you were to take the implement off the back, it would fall down onto its nose. And they were hand operated, and the girls in the war, the land army, the land girls, they would use those all day long to plough the fields. And they're very difficult to use. When I drive it around a museum, you can do a couple of laps and then you've sort of had enough, really. But they are good fun. It gets a lot of attention. Powerful little thing with a single cylinder engine, air cooled, and it makes a lovely popping noise, and the kiddies love that one. And they love seeing it running, they love sitting on it, and they love playing with it. And I think really that's probably my favourite one in the museum. So, but this one, if you have like a garden centre or small holding, that would be quite useful. If you had something a bit bigger, a few acres, then we would have this little Ferguson tractor here. This is the petrol version. We do actually have both. We have the petrol and the diesel. I'm not too sure which one I prefer. I think perhaps the diesel, but this petrol one runs lovely, and we actually use this around the site. We use it for moving stuff about. We have the hopper on the back, which is hydraulically operated, and we just use it. And we also do, when the youngsters are in, we do sitting on a tractor, and you can have the youngsters of all ages sitting on the tractor. Some don't like to get on it, but quite a lot don't like to get off it. So once they're there, the most common question we get from the youngsters is, can I drive it? And I say, I'm afraid you can't, but you can sit on it. They sit on this one, they sit on that one, and they just love the old machines.
The museum provides a fantastic opportunity to volunteer and connect with fellow enthusiasts.
Let's head over to the woodyard and meet one of the original volunteers.
Oh, well, I'm Philip Tracy. I've been a volunteer at this museum back from when it was founded by Henry and Madge Jackson, and we decided that it would be a good idea to have a timber yard, and Henry was in favour of that, and he actually had an old saw bench which was part of the museum collection over a period of time we cleared all the trees in that, and initially there was only 3 or 4 of us did it, and started building buildings, and now it's developed that we've got a regular core of young and older enthusiasts that work in this woodyard regularly, and every piece of timber that's used around the museum for fencing rails and gates and everything like that is actually produced in the timber yard, and a lot of it from fallen trees that have come down during the gales or wood that they've acquired. But there's a regular teamwork here. Some youngsters, only 18, 19-year-olds, 3 of them that work here. We've got a really faithful team here week by week working in the woodyard. We've been donated on loan a steam portable engine, and in the near future the building behind me is going to be partly demolished, and we're going to install a different saw bench and powering it with its own steam engine, so that'll be just like it was in the 1800s. We have around the woodyard lots of old machines, but we've also got a fairly modern timber processing plant at the top of the yard owned by one of our members. We can cut timber to virtually any size. We just deliver large logs up by the saw, load it onto the saw, and then the timber is processed, prepared and sawn on the site here by the volunteers. I've been a volunteer since the early days. I got a passion for old tractors when I was a child, and I've got a collection of old tractors myself, and also engines. I love working on engines, and coming over here is such an enjoyment because there's such a great team. I'm part of a team here, and it very much is a team effort, and it's just lovely for me to be able to come over here and work whenever I want on engines and machinery, and that's a great joy.
Thank you, Phil. Your dedication and passion shines through, and I can't wait to see the portable steam engine unveiled on a future visit.
No peeping until then, Luna.
In that case, let's leave Phil to secure the woodyard, and we'll head over to the laundry to meet Catherine.
It's hard to imagine not having an electric washing machine and using a range of equipment to wash all your clothes.
Everything took a lot of effort.
Catherine shares her love of the museum, why she volunteers, and explains the process of doing laundry in a bygone era.
When you've been in a school for over 40 years, working with a team and lots of people, it's very lonely just being at home, so it fills that niche. Having a purpose to get up in the morning, because otherwise you forget what day of the week it is, so it gives routine to your life, and I just really enjoy it. It's great working with children. I've always worked with children, so I enjoy it from that point of view, but I really like the people I work with. There's so many talents here. So the first step is to get water from the water pump into your wash tub. To the wash tub you add the washboard, and then you dunk your shirt and lay it on the washboard. The idea is to start from the top and work downwards with your carbolic soap and your scrubbing brush. Most importantly, you have to really clean the collars and cuffs because of pollution in the Victorian times. Collars and cuffs got very grubby with cinders and smuts from smoke. After you've done that, you dunk the shirt in the wash tub to rinse it. You remove the washboard and you start to use equipment. You start with the dolly, which you put in and you turn it 45 degrees each way to agitate the garment, and that swishes the water through the shirt. Then you use the posser, which you bang up and down and up and down, and it forces water through the shirt and then sucks it back up, so it rinses it. Eventually you empty the water away, and in a proper laundry you'd rinse it again in more fresh water. Then you take the wet shirt and you wring it, and then you put it through the mangle, which squeezes out the excess water where you haven't been able to wring it all out. And finally, it all ends up on the washing line using traditional pegs. So working here is quite interesting, because when you say you're a volunteer at the Rural Life Living Museum, people say, oh, well, it's just tractors. And I say, no, it's not. It's more than tractors. It's preserving artifacts and buildings from the past that were part of this community. So, and a lot of them have been donated. So we have a chapel, we have a village hall, we have the schoolroom. Deeks, the cycle company from Frimley Green, where the family are still involved in keeping that heritage going. So we are the keepers of collections of all aspects of life in a community, as opposed to just farms.
Plus, the museum features its own train line,
where a delightful train whisks visitors from the entrance through enchanting woods to the museum summit, lovingly cared for by another wonderful team of dedicated volunteers.
We run most weekends, sort of from spring to autumn, having an array of heritage diesels, and on busy event days we have our steam engines out on service, running up and down the line. Again, we run most weekends. For a nominal small donation of £3 per person. We have about half a mile of track. We start at the entrance of the museum and climb about 20 feet up to the station here at Millswood, which got opened in the early 2000s. So I've been volunteering on the railway since I was about 15, so 7-8 years now. Started cleaning, helping out where I can. And now I do most of the big jobs. So the engine that we've got in front of us, I partial own. Have to rebuild it. I've got another engine in the sheds which I'm about to start rebuilding. The coaches that we're sat on, I've rebuilt the bottom ends of them, so they're all in tip-top condition. I also help out on the tracks. We've got quite a major winter project this year. Doing some track improvements here at Millswood. I now work for South Western Railway in and out of London. So some of the old drivers here used to drive the steam in the BR days, and they said, "I'll get on the railway as soon as you can." So that's what I do for a living now. We're always looking for more volunteers, whether it's to come clean the fences down, run trains, or just come along for a social aspect. We always need more volunteers. Most people, when they come down here, you don't know the backgrounds and that sort of thing, so we give you a flavour of everything. So a bit of guarding, that's how we generally start, is doing the guarding and shunting. So putting the engine on each end of the train. And then at the end of the day, do you want to have a drive of the engine? So we let them have a drive up and down, see if that interests them. Some people don't want to do the operations at all. Some people are more focused in the sheds. Got 1,001 projects always going on. So a couple of the diesels, having engine rebuilds at the minute, so some people like to focus on that. All the steam engines, they're always needing work done to them. They're 100 and something years old, so they always need something doing to them. So some people like tinkering around with that. Or, as I say, the general upkeep of keeping the stations looking nice. Up here at Millswood, at the other end, Reed Road, there's always something that interests someone.
It's wonderful to see such a range of volunteering opportunities, and heartwarming that so many people of different ages generously share their time and expertise.
As our visit wraps up, I'm already looking forward to coming back to explore more exhibits and treat ourselves to something delicious in the cafe.
Well, since I got a lovely keyring made for me, why not spend your pocket money in the shop and pick a sweet memento from our visit?
Before we hop back into the car, there's one more delightful surprise. We're right next to the beautiful Farnham Heath Nature Reserve. Let's explore.
The RSPB has transformed Farnham Heath from a conifer plantation into a vibrant heathland, bustling with wildlife.
The area features expansive heather that's absolutely breathtaking, especially in July and August, and it's home to wonderful species like the nightjar and the Dartford warbler.
This habitat is essential for reptiles like sand lizards and adders, as well as fascinating invertebrates such as the green tiger beetle.
Plus, it's one of only 8 places in the UK where you can spot the rare field cricket, and it also supports a variety of woodland species, including siskins and bullfinches.
With a myriad of paths and benches, it's a perfect spot to enjoy some fresh air.
From June to October, don't miss the charming stroll along a free temporary artwork trail crafted by the talented students from the University of the Creative Arts, all proudly supported by Surrey Hills Arts.
This inspiring environment sets the perfect backdrop for our final guest's practice. Leanne will explain sound therapy and guide us in a short session, offering some relaxation.
My journey as a sound therapist started back in 2000 when I was really interested in music. I'd trained as a flautist and a saxophonist and piano at music college. And I was really drawn to the therapeutic benefits of sound. So back in 2000, the British Academy of Sound Therapy started their first practitioner level diploma. So I joined up, one of the first, and that's where my journey started. Went through that, trained as a teacher, and I've been teaching and working with sound for the last 24 years. So there are loads of benefits of sound therapy, and everyone's different and everyone's unique journey is different. So it's been proven to reduce high blood pressure, stress, anxiety, helps with pain management. We've had people who have had chronic fatigue, ME, have noticed a change in their symptoms or has helped them to manage their symptoms. So it works on all the different levels of emotional well-being, so physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And that could just be going out and doing some gardening as an example of wanting to connect back to the earth. So sound it can work on so many different levels: clarity, clear thoughts, artistic inspiration, so many different things. It's just unique. So I'm going to take you through a journey with different instruments. So each instrument that I've got has got a different sonic sound signature. So we've got the Himalayan singing bowls. People would say that sounds nice and warm, earthy, nurturing, comforting. And there's lots of rich harmonics. And then there's the gong. Again, that can be warm and earthy. It also can be powerful, good for pain, helping with pain. So it's a little bit like a sonic massage. And then we've gone into the crystal bowls, which is pure crystalline. Again, can take someone very, very deep, as all the bowls can do, and instruments. So at the end, I'll be bringing in some therapeutic percussion, so it's like the tinkly bells and the rain stick and koshi chimes and shakers. And for some, that is probably the most therapeutic part of the session. Some people absolutely love that out of all the instruments, but it also brings people back to the space, ground you, bring you back to the now. So just take a little minute just to relax into your chair. Just feel your feet on the floor, make yourself comfortable, make sure your back's nicely supported. And just if you feel comfortable, just close your eyes and take a few breaths. And just allow the sound to wash over you. your own time. Just bring yourself back to the space, just check back in on how you're feeling, and to be mindful that you have had hopefully a nice relaxing space with some sound. Make sure you drink plenty of water, take it a little bit easier. Things might seem a little bit more apparent, lights might be a little bit brighter, you might be more sensitive to the sounds. Just give yourself some time to be gentle on yourself and just to notice how you're feeling in your body.
Thank you, Leanne. We hope everybody watching is feeling relaxed.
Now, our virtual day trip began with sculpture, and to finish, we've walked through the glorious Farnham Heath to admire Walter Bailey's sculpture, House of Invisible Hands.
We've packed in so many wonderful experiences along the way.
But now it's time to say goodbye. We hope you've enjoyed your time with us.
See you next time!
This virtual day trip was created by Whistlestop Arts.
And it was funded by Arts Partnership Surrey.
Thank you to everyone who has supported this project.
For more resources and information about the work that we are involved in, please visit whistlestoparts.org.